All right, and welcome back to Q1 Week 6. I expect you to die. Today we're doing day 2 of our dye, our unwrapping UV project. So let's go ahead and go through what we did yesterday, just as a reference. Yesterday was the model in UV day, where we actually modeled the dye, which basically we chamfered it, and that was it. So that was nice and done quickly. And then next we UV'd the dye. So we prepared the dye for the UV by resetting the transforms, finalized the pivot. We planar directed the name. We did planar directions. We talked about Z, X, and Y. And then we did some basic planar mapping. We broke some edge and stitched some stuff together. And then we packed the UV in to our UV area. Now today we're going to change the diffuse map. We're actually going to create the diffuse map. Okay? So we're going to do that mostly in Photoshop today. So the goal for today is we're going to build the diffuse map, we're going to talk about CS6, we're going to insert the UV in Photoshop and create the background color and then create the pips, and then we're going to build the diffuse map again, we're going to render and insert the cloud layer, save and export, and save and render the dye so you can put it on your fridge at home and your mama will be so proud, or grandma, or papa, or whatever. Alright, so this is where we left off yesterday. This is our the end of day 1, dye day 1. I'm going to go ahead and save this now while I'm thinking about it. I'm going to save it as dye day 2 so that when we're done you can have it. Now actually that's basically it for now. Yesterday we also made sure that we, let's see, Alright, current assets. Yesterday we also exported this dye_UV, which we're going to need today. Alright, so I'm going to minimize 3D Studio, and then I'm going to actually open up CS6, Photoshop CS6, which you should have up. And now we are going to take the dye. The first thing we're going to do is drag the dye UV into this general work area. Now, I'm going to do that, and then it's going to automatically set up my scene for that particular file. Now yesterday we exported this as a PNG and we made sure that we could see through it. So right now you can't really see anything. It's there, you have to look real close, but it's definitely there. What we need to do is it already set up the scene by 1024 pixels by 1024 pixels. By dragging in that UV we get a nice setup that's ready to go for us, which is great. So the first thing you did when you dragged it in, it actually created a layer, and that layer is right here. This is your layer panel. Okay, your tool panel is over here, all right, and any modifications of any tool you select is over here. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is rename this layer, because right now it's called layer 0. Let's call it dye_UV. I use underscores a lot because the Unreal Engine doesn't like spaces. So if you put a space in your file name, it becomes problematic. So I use underscores instead of spaces. So dye_UV is what we have. You could really name this whatever you want. You can name it, UV, and that would be fine. But that's where we're gonna go with. All right. So underneath, at the bottom of the layers menu area, there's this little button on the right hand side next to the garbage can. It's called Create a New Layer. Go ahead and click on that. It's going to say Layer 1. I'm going to call this Color. Alright? Color. Yeah, that's good. Now, we can actually click and drag on layers and move them around. And we want to actually move this underneath the dye UV layer. So just left click and drag down. And then if you drag it to the bottom, dye UV jumps to the top and colors at the bottom. What we're going to do is we're going to create a dye, a color. Alright, we're going to color it. We can make it whatever color we want. And in order to do that, we need to be able to pick a color. Now, be able to pick colors is all the way over here, this color area. Okay? Now, there's 2 different swatches. If you click on either one, I'm going to click on the white one, which is the top one. It brings up our foreground color picker. Alright? So foreground is the little box in front, and background is the box in the back. So foreground color picker, I'm going to pick like a blue, alright, roughly. I'll click OK. Alright, great. If I press this little arrow, it jumps to the background, and then it pushes the foreground color into the back. And if I click on that, I can change this color if I wanted to. But I'm not going to, and I'm going to swap the blue back to the front. Now, up here right below the eraser, you probably have your gradient tool. Okay? That's not what we want today. We're going to use the paint bucket tool. Alright, so click on, left click and hold on this, and you'll get a little flyout window, and we're going to select the paint bucket tool by hovering over it and letting go. Alright, so now we've got a paint bucket tool, and what color is selected is this color here. So I'm going to make sure that this color layer is selected, because whatever layer is highlighted is what we're going to actually be able to paint bucket onto. So go to color, select color, and then just click anywhere, really. Boom. As soon as you do that, it fills the entire area with whatever color you picked. If you pick blue, you get blue. Fantastic. Now you can actually see the UV. Like, this is the dye UV that we had yesterday. Think of the UV like a coloring book. This is our coloring book, and as you remember from yesterday, this is our top face, this is our front, this one's our back, our left, right, and bottom. Okay? Now, if you're a 3D artist and you create this for a 2D artist, you're going to want to label these. And that's one of your main jobs, to be able to label that. Now, you can do that really easily using the paintbrush tool. Okay, the paintbrush tool is over here, right here. Okay, now, what you want to get used to is building things in different layers. Because if I click on the paintbrush tool, and I try and paint, all right, even right now, if I try and paint, you can't see anything because I'm using the same color. If I swap the color and try and paint, you can actually see what I'm doing. I don't want that, so I'm going to hit Control Z to undo. What I want to do is, instead of coloring on the color layer, I want to create a new layer. That way I don't actually modify the color layer, because I want that to stay kind of safe. So come down here, create a new layer in this little pad again, right next to the garbage can and the folder. Create new layer. And I'm going to call this, let's go ahead and call this pips. Okay, the pips are what the dye dots are called. Okay, so I'm going to make sure pips are in between dye and color, because if we put them below color, you won't be able to see them. If we put them above dye, we won't. It'll be hard to see our coloring book. Okay, so we're on pips. Okay, so now we're going to change the size, because I can't. If I go into my paintbrush tool and I click on something, those are really small dots, and I have to like do that to make a pip. So I don't want to do that. So undo. I'm going to increase the size of my brush. Now, any tool you choose, the options change up here. So if I click my paintbrush or paint bucket, you see all these options change. If I click the paintbrush, all of these options change. The easiest one to mess with on the paintbrush, and make sure you're on paintbrush and not pencil or something like that. We're going to use brush today. All right, which you once again left click and hold, and then your flyout window will pop up. So click brush. Now come up here under size. I'm going to change my size. I'm going to type in 35. Yes. And hardness, we're going to leave it 100. All right. If you've already got something set, that's great. You can adjust it. Now we're good to go. Okay. When you're done with hardness, click enter. And now you've got a circle, and you can see it. Now, if I think this is too small, I can actually adjust it by clicking the right curly brace, which is underneath the plus and the equal key on the keyboard, next to the backslash. So it's kind of near the backspace key, just below it. It's the right curly brace, makes it bigger. See how it goes up by 10 units, and the left curly brace makes it smaller. Okay, so I'm going to bump it up so it's bigger, just because why not? So let's click here. All right, cool. Now I use black. You can use whatever color you want, and I chose that color by swapping through here. So I'm going to change my background color, which was black. I'm going to move it to the front and choose a color. If I want white, I could choose it. I'm going to stick with black because I think that's a good idea. Now, if I want to zoom in a little bit, so let's say I just want to be able to look at just the top face. I can hold Alt, all right, and then mouse wheel up. So hold Alt and mouse wheel up. All right, I'm going to do that. All right, cool. Cool. And I can click the center area. There, that's a nice dye spot, or a pip if you will. Notice I'm on the pips layer that I created earlier. So if I press this little eyeball, boop, the dot disappears because it's hidden. If I take the color layer and I move it above the pips, it also disappears because the pips are now underneath this color. If I change the opacity of the color layer, you can start seeing through it to the layers beneath it. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to make that 100. I'm going to move this down below pips. Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and hold, if you mouse wheel up and down, you can scroll down. So I'm going to scroll down because what I want is, I'm going to hold Alt and middle mouse out, middle mouse scroll out. Okay? Down, I mean. I'm going to go down here. Now, what I want is I want to put 6 because the two opposite sides of a die equal to 7. So the top and the bottom need to equal 7. So 1 plus what equals 7 is 6. So we're going to make 6. Now, it sure would be nice if I had a guideline because I've got to kind of ballpark this. The way we create guidelines is under Window, actually View, sorry. Right now, if you look at your screen, you don't have rulers probably. If it's set up like this, you don't see any rulers. So go to View. We're going to turn on our rulers, which you could also hit Control R, but hit Turn on Rulers. And now we have our rulers. Now our rulers in this case are set to 100%. Okay. So the nice part about rulers is it allows us to easily create guides. So if I click inside this ruler area, left click, and drag over, I get this weird line that I can adjust. So I'm going to put that right there and let go. When I do that, it creates a guideline that I can use to pretend, to sort of decide where my center is. And I can actually adjust that line once I've already created it by going up to this arrow button up here, arrow tool, and then I can click and move it back and forth. So if I want to move it. Now you'll notice there's a little number, 36.3, 37, 38.9. I don't know if you can see it in here, but there's a little widget that's coming up, and it can tell me where I'm at. If I want to make sure that I'm snapping to a logical number and not getting too granular, I can hold Shift as I do this, and you'll notice it snaps by 1% each time. So if I know that I want, let's say if I think that 39.0 is where I want my center line for my pips to be, I can hold Shift and click over. So there. I think I've decided that that's where my line is. I feel for me, and once again I'm sort of eyeballing this, so I would say 38.3 looks like the center for that, and then I'm going to click on the top up here and drag down and sort of try and figure out where the center is there. There. So now I've got sort of a guideline set. Now it's nice because you can use this to sort of split up the rest of your pips. And it doesn't really matter if they're 100% accurate. We're not really going to be crazy into Photoshop right now. Just go ahead and click the brush tool and create your pips. You can go down here, click 1, 2, whoops, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so that's 6 pips. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Now, like I said, each side has to equal 7. So if this one's going to be 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then this one has to be 3. 1, I'm going to use that guideline. 2, 3, and that means this could be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this has to be 2 in order to equal 7. Once again, that's not that big of a deal. We're just sort of putting our pips in, doing the best we can. The guides are nice if you want to if you want to use them, that's great. If not, that's fine too. Notice mine are perfect, and I'm okay with that. Okay, so now our pips are done. That's great. We went through on how the rulers work, which is nice, and then we created the pips. So now we're going to try and make our die look a little more real. And I'm going to do that by creating something called a cloud layer. So I'm going to go over here and deselect and make sure that I don't have anything selected. So I click inside here and make sure nothing's selected. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, and call it cloud. C-L-O-U-D, clouds. Alright, I'm going to drag it down below dye but above pips, because what I want to do is I want to create a little subtle discoloration. I'm going to use this cloud layer to do it. So I highlight the cloud layer, go up to filter. We're going to create a render. We're rendering a filter. Alright, we're going to render clouds. And when we click on that, we get a weird discoloration. Now, I forgot to do something. See how it's blue and black? It's not really what I wanted. I'm going to undo that and make sure that my colors are black and white. It doesn't really matter which one's front, which one's back, but they need to be black and white. And the reason is we're going to multiply this layer. So it's going to let some things go through and some things not. Okay? And I'll explain in a second. So under clouds, go to filter, render, clouds. Alright, cool. Black and white. Much better. So what this is going to do is this is going to create like a cloudiness that darkens some parts of the image and not others. But right now, it's covering everything because this is a normal layer. What we want to do is change this layer, which is over here. The layer type right now is set to normal. Right? So is this one, so is that one, so is that one. Under clouds, we want to highlight clouds and make sure instead of normal, it's set to multiply. Now I actually watched this in another YouTube video and I thought it was really a great way to sort of add subtle discoloration to your object. Now I think at 100% opacity and 100% fill it's too much. So I'm going to knock the opacity down to around 40. Right? To me, what that does is it makes it so that there's some subtle discoloration here, but it's not so much that it looks crazy. You can also adjust the fill. If you knock it down to 40, it probably is too much. Like opacity at 50 and fill at 60 is nice because it gives just a subtle discoloration. It makes things feel a little more lived in. Part of that really makes the whole feeling of the dye feel a lot more real. Now you can go crazy. You can adjust the opacity and fill whatever you want, however you like it, as dark and colorful as you want, and that's basically where we're at. Okay, cool. So this is where I'm done. I'm done basically. So what I need to do now is export this out. To export this out, first thing I'm going to do is save my file. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and we're going to save this as a Photoshop document. I'm going to save it in Current Assets. I'm going to call it dye DM. It's a Photoshop document. So hit save. That way it's done. Now, before I actually export it out for 3D Studio Max, I want to make sure that I turn off the UV. I'm going to hide the UV because, and the guides don't matter, so we don't care about the guides. But the UV, if we leave it on and we render it, actually we'll do that. Let's leave it on and render it. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to render it and show it to you. So I'm going to go to File. I'm going to save for the web, right? And it takes a second to pop up. Right now my image size is 1024 by 1024, and I'm going to leave it like that for now, even though that's really high resolution for something that's small. What we want to do for preset is we want to set the preset to PNG 24, which is right here, and then you can do right here under PNG. If you have it, PNG 8. PNG 8 doesn't work so well with a lot of game engines, so I like PNG 24. The nice part is down here it tells you how big the file size is going to be, which is 285.4K, which is great. I want to hit save and go up to my assets. We are on dye, YouTube, current assets. Okay, so I'm going to save this as dye DM, hit save. Alright, I'm going to bring up 3D Studio Max. Now in 3D Studio Max, which is where we left it, I'm going to hit P for perspective because that was making my head hurt. I'm going to open up my material editor. Alright, I'm going to go into my folder that has my dye DM and I'm going to drag it into my second material. I'm going to minimize this now. And now I'm going to just take that and drag it on. Now, if I deselect this, you'll notice that these edges are still there. That is frustrating because we don't want those edges. But the problem is we baked them in when we exported out our Photoshop document. So to fix that, we need to turn that off and do the same thing. File, save for web, our preset is going to be PNG 24, right? And then image size is 1024 by 1024. If we wanted to, we could make this 512 by 512, or even something smaller, and it'll show you how much space you're saving. For a small object, you could go smaller, but for now we're going to leave it 1024. Hit save. I'm going to overwrite my old version. Hit save, and it's going to say, are you sure? I'm going to say yes, please replace it. Please, computer. I'm going to be polite. All right, now you'll notice the image is already changed here. As soon as I move this, right, deselect, turn off edge faces, it's gone. That's our die. Now you can see it's super pretty. Super pretty. Looks so good. All right. Then we're almost done, actually. We've rendered our image, or we've saved and exported our Photoshop file. Now what we need to do is render our image. Okay? I also want to make this a little glossy because dice are shiny plastic usually. So we're going to go in the material editor by pressing M or by clicking here, and under the specular highlights, I'm going to change the specular level to 100. Okay, you can see it's glossy already. And glossiness, I'm going to jump up to, I don't know, how about 40? That looks good. Now when we look around, oh, so glossy, so nice, right? You could soften it a little bit. You can play with the glossiness, you know, see what you like. Maybe you like it at 30, something like that. Get a little more shine on it. Cool. You can also see a preview up here. Now we're going to render this out. Let's go ahead and save this. All right, save it real quick. I hit save. Now I'm going to hit Shift F. Now the default for me when the render defaults are this 1320 by 480 or something like that, and that's not great. So I'm going to hit F10 or I'm going to hit Render Setup. Either one works. F10 is what I'm going to use. All right, and that brings up my render setups. Under output size, under the common tab, under output size, I'm going to go all the way down here to HD TV video. Okay? And I'm going to change it to 1920 by 1080, which is okay. And then I'm going to close it. Now, you'll notice I have this like weird box that pops up. If you hit Shift F, that's your render safe zone. So it lets you know what the actual image is going to render, like what it'll look like. All right? So I'm going to hit perspective, make sure I'm in perspective mode. Alt, move this thing around, and then I'm going to go down here to this tool down here, which is a little magnifying glass. It's called a zoom tool. If you click on it, it allows you, rather than using your middle mouse button, you can left click and push in and adjust your image. That way you can get it just right. See how there's very little wasted space there and there? I'm inside my yellow box. Now I can go to F9 or press render production, hit F9, and there's my die, and that's what it would render at. Now I think it's a little too glossy that way. I'm going to move it a little bit so I can see it a little better. Hit 9, maybe a little more like this. Render it again. That looks pretty good. I like that shine on there, right? I've got a little bit of wasted space up there. I might be able to get rid of it. Yeah, okay, cool. So render, all right, cool. Now the cloud layer we did earlier is giving us a subtle edge line there from where we set it up. That's unfortunate. We might be able to get a better angle on this thing like that. The cloud layer is cool, but it also gives us seams sometimes. So let's try that one. Render. I think that looks nice. Oh, you can still see a cloud render problem. Whatever. The idea is still there. Later on we'll deal with more issues like that. For now, this is perfect. So once you render it, click over here to save image. I'm going to save this image as die TN for thumbnail. All right, die underscore TN. Of course, it's a JPEG or a PNG. I'm sorry, it's a PNG. Die underscore TN. Click save. I'm going to save it as RGB 24-bit. Click OK, and it's done. And we are done. We've set up our project, and now it's in great shape. Now, this was our weekly class for this week, and now if you're done with day 2, after we saved and rendered, we rendered the material and added the gloss and render settings, set up the render settings and exported it. If you want to extend it, you can do some dumb, silly stuff like what I did. You can put your casino logo on there. You can put your dumb face. You can change all the pips into images. All that sort of stuff. That would be great. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to do one more video and talk about how to do text in 3D Studio. Or not 3D Studio, but Photoshop. If you want to do something crazy, you can do a tetrahedron, pyramid tetrahedron, which is just a 4-sided die, or a dodecahedron, which is 12, or a icosahedron, which is a 20 if you're into D&D. And there you go. So if you decide to do something dumb, that's great. Let me know. I'm excited about it. All right. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll add another video to talk about how to add text. It'll probably be in Donan's tips and tricks, and then we'll be ready to go. All right. Thanks for watching.